to educate, motivate, and build one another through shared knowledge and success. This is Young and Successful, and these are your hosts, Jay Chukwi, Kenny Awashika, and PJ Luminan.
Welcome back to the Young and Successful podcast. I'm very excited for this one, man. I feel like we've been on a roll with the interviews lately, and it's been going great.
Yes, sir.
And today is you know what I mean? Today is no exception, right? Because we have, I'd say, quite an interesting guest, or I'd say, guest with a very interesting story, right? And just
Yep.
we were talking before we got onto the podcast here, and introduce our guest so we can get into it because I have questions, tons of questions for John here. So our guest today was adopted 2 times. That makes 3 sets of parents, right? As you can see, this is really getting interesting, right? And it's 3 different parents in 3 different continents, right? And throughout his childhood, right, definitely went through some hard times, slept on yoga mats in studio apartments, financially cut off in his freshman year in college. But this was just a minor bump, right, on his path to where he is right now, as he proceeded to complete his master's degree, currently serves in the United States Air Force as a senior master sergeant. Thank you for your service,
Thank you
I
for your
have to say.
service.
Right. Currently, he's also an analyst at Booz Allen and passively operates a rental car business and real estate business. Please join us in welcoming Mr. John Mills Hearne.
Thank you for having me.
How was that
Glad to,
introduction?
yeah, dude.
Oh, that was beautiful.
I've been
Thanks
working
for
on
being
it.
here. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the story, man. Like from the beginning to where you are now.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go through the long version. I usually give people the short option. But so, as introduced, I've been adopted twice.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to be shown video-wise. I think so. But a
Mhm.
lot of the questions I get is my voice and my face don't match.
Yeah.
I
Um,
was gonna bring that up. But we just wanted to let you know what I mean. We just had to let you
back,
warm up, and then we'll get in there, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty.
back in my day, it was just like a superpower. I could my voice accent was a little stronger, and my wingman and I could go up to a bar, and I would post at the bar next to a female that I wanted to talk to, and all I have to do was have a conversation with my wingman, and eventually I'll get a tap on the shoulder with, "Hey, I gotta ask, like, where you from?" Because nobody could pinpoint that accent. It was either, "Hey, I think you're from Boston. I think you're from Australia. I don't know. Like, please tell me more. I want to hear you speak." But so I was born in Singapore. I was adopted immediately by my aunt and uncle. My aunt had just remarried and wasn't able to have another kid after she gave birth to my sister. And so she had reached out to her brother and his wife, so my biological mom and dad, and had asked if the next child they had, if they could adopt so they could start a family. Um, and my biological mom did the most unselfish thing that you could ever ask a woman to do, not out of hardship, not out of need, but just out of love for family. Agreed. Both my parents agreed to allow me to adopt it, to grow up in England, thousands of miles away from them, just because of family and love. To the point that it was years later, I think I was 18 years old in Singapore, and I'd gone on vacation, and my mom were in the car, and she just burst out crying. And "Mom, what's wrong?" And she says, "John, I'm so sorry. It was the worst mistake I've ever done. I'm sorry. I regret it." And I said, "Why? Like, you did the most unselfish thing a mom could ever do." And like, she goes, "Yeah, but you got to be mad and upset at me." And I went, "Why? It wasn't like you didn't love me. You did it for the love of anybody else. I couldn't be mad at you." So uh, when my aunt and uncle adopted me, I refer to them a lot of time as my mom and dad in England. Um, and then I'll talk about my parents in Singapore as my parents in Singapore. And so then I grew up in England. We had gone through some hard financial times out there. My dad was an accountant, and he ended up taking an accountancy company and ended up going bankrupt. We moved around a whole bunch. And when I was 7 or 8 years old, we moved into this neighborhood, and there was this American family who lived next door. And I ran over there, and a guy was under his Volvo 340, I think it was. I remember it was a red Volvo, and he was underneath working on it, and I kicked him. Like, legs just sticking out of the car, and I just kind of kicked him. And great way to introduce yourself as like a 7, 8 year old kid. And he comes out and he's like, "Hey, like, can I help you? What's going on?" I said, "Hey, do you have any kids?" And he was like, "Yeah, actually, we just moved from Germany. I've got three kids, 2 daughters and a son, and I virtually lived at their house. I was over there all the time. I hadn't been baptized at that point, and I ended up being baptized Catholic and asked them to be my godparents. They eventually moved back to the U.S. to McLean, and I think at the time when my dad, who I refer to as my dad, is my dad here in the U.S. Just for clarification, worked at MITRE, where PJ is interning right now.
Small world.
Small world. And so I had come back on vacations, and eventually my aunt and uncle, or my mom and dad in England, were going to separate. My mom in England wanted to take me back to Singapore, to be with my family out there, to give me the structure, a more of a stable structure for my remaining teenage years. And she told my godmother that, was like, "Hey, I'm taking John to Singapore." And my godmother was like, he's like 14 years old. This is a very difficult time for him. If you're going to try and move him all the way to the East into a whole different lifestyle in a country he doesn't understand and a culture, give me some time before you do this, and let me talk to Greg, my dad here, and we will come up with something. And so it came up to me, and the question was brought only to me, which was, this is John's decision, but if he wants to, he can come live with us in the US. We will adopt him, and we will treat him like he's one of our own. And so at 14 years old, I made the decision that I'm just going to move to the US. And when the time in England, as you had reiterated to, is lived in bad parts of town,
Right.
single studio apartment, yoga mat as my bedding, a sleeping bag. I got used to not sleeping with a pillow, that to the point when I went to tech, I didn't even bother with a pillow, because I don't need it. That's just a luxury.
Yeah.
And took that years of moving around and instability of knowing where you're going to live, and just not exactly being proud of what you have at home, to moving to the US, to going from being virtually an only child to the oldest of five, growing up in McLean, which is one of the most fanciest towns in the US, and multiple homes to S-Class Mercedes, business class flights, being like, holy crap, wow. So that moved forward. I went to an all-boys Catholic school in Potomac, Maryland. People think it's the worst thing. You went to an all-boys school, man, that's got to be rough. Like, how did you survive? It was the greatest thing ever. Like, that school, the Heights in Potomac, Maryland, at the time I went there, I think it was 400 or 500 kids from 3rd grade to 12th grade, all boys. My graduating class had about 50 boys. And their idea was trying to turn boys into men. And not boys to men, like the R&B group.
Everyone's a boy band. It's a boy band school.
Just sing for us, man.
But their mentality was to develop you, to give you the thing. So we had days like there were snowball fights, like odd grades versus even grade snowball fights. You could wrestle with your classmates, just not inside the building. Guess what? You went to an old boys school. You could fart. Like, you ain't trying to peacock. You're not trying to show off to the girls. And people are like, well, what about girls? Guess what? nearly every guy there had a sister, and they were all girls schools, and we had events that had us, so we didn't miss out. We got to be boys developing into men at the school, and it set a great foundation, educational wise, and hard work there, and having high expectations. Ended up going to Virginia Tech. Was very proud there to get in. I guess I took that a little too much for granted at that point, because my free ride to Virginia Tech was short-lived.
Grades.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't try to hide it. And my parents was the kindest, sweetest folks out there, but they are no dummies. They've from the time they used to laugh, they used to have this, hey, to the kids, I'd like you to know that we're rich, not you.
Dang.
Yeah, and so that was they set the ways, and they set the life lessons for us to grow up good. But yeah, I didn't try to hide it, or maybe I did try to hide it, just not very well. But my best friend from high school, him and I grew up together. We went to the Heights. We ended up being roommates at Tech. My sister went to Radford. We were in the same grade, so I had this very immediately at Tech, this network of being able to be comfortable. And
now, just one, when you say when you went to Tech, is that when you first went into the Air Force?
no, so Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
call
Gotcha.
it Tech.
So 2003, I went to, it was my freshman year at Virginia Tech, and my parents had a requirement. It was, you're either trying or you make a 3.0. And that's not that difficult. Like a 3.0 isn't like
A couple of these.
Yeah, just go to class.
Go to
Few
class,
B's and
try.
1A. Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents came down to visit me probably about a month or so into school, or came to visit my sister and I. And my sister, she is the hardest working. She studied her butt off for the SAT. She did all the prep classes. She would have note cards this thick and knew all of them. And she just was not a very good test taker. And she stressed. And the SATs is like the way to get into college back then.
Yeah.
And so she stressed about it. And for me, it was, I got a good night's sleep and I did really well. So she already had that hard work mentality. And I'm like, hey, I just got in like Johnny Manziel got into the NFL, like just pure luck and just natural ability.
Yeah.
So a month into Tech, into Tech, my parents came to visit me, and my textbooks were still saran wrapped.
Ooh. Dude, what were you doing? Did you even go to class?
Gotta try that.
And even when I did go to class, there was a decent amount of poker involved too. So yes, that obviously was not showing my parents the initiative or the studying that they were hoping to see out of their tuition money that they're forking over. And so then I think they came down about a month later, and I was like, you know what, I got them. You know what? I opened up all my textbooks, broke the spines. I made this absolutely gorgeous, like on the calendar. I wrote every assignment out, every quiz, every assignment, and I made this thing beautiful. And I put it right behind my desk. And so my parents like walk in, and my dad's like looking around, and he's like, looks up, see the textbooks that they look like they're being used. You've got a paper up on your computer. Look at this calendar. This is really nice. And he goes 1 week backwards.
Ooh.
Damn.
Terrible.
Damn.
You made this up.
That calendar hung me.
How did that feel like for you?
Oh, that was like me thinking that I had just made the winning shot in the NCAA final, only to realize I stepped out of bounds. But yeah, that just gutted me. And he just goes, "You can't bullshit a bullshitter." All right, Dad, you got me. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll get these grades up. And I ended up finishing the year with a 2.8. But they knew the writing was on the wall. And to this day, I think it was the catalyst that started my life. They had given me the props, the tools, the mentality to succeed. Um,
Mhm.
there's some people just need that kick in the ass, and that was it for me. So that Thanksgiving, I had gone to England to visit my family, my parents there. I had come back, and my parents owned a network management company in McLean. It was about 2 blocks away from where our house was. And I get home, and I think it was the same day that I literally got off the flight. I may have just came back from seeing my girlfriend, and they said, "Hey, I got a message. Meet us in our office." I'm like, "Damn, this is weird. Why am I
Office.
going to yeah, my
Office,
parents'
right?
office.
Not the house.
So not the house.
Dang.
So you
So
get
like,
comfortable.
yeah. So like I like drop my bags off and stuff, and I get in my car and I drive over there. And I feel like it's a scene out of Scarface.
Mm.
Like the lights are dimmed in the office. It's a Sunday night, no one's around, and the lights dimly in my dad's office. And if I picture this right, I think my mom is sitting in my dad's office chair. He was the CEO and president, and my mom was the CFO. And my dad's leaning against the windowsill. And they kind of really just cut to the chase, and they said, "Hey, like, it's over." What do you mean it's over? And it says, you know the requirements, you know the 3.0. This free ride is over. You need to figure out your life. You will finish this semester out, and we suggest maybe looking into the armed forces. Maybe take some time, go back to England, but try and plan out what you want to do.
How old were you when this happened?
Uh, it's 2003, and so I think I was like 18.
Oh wow.
So
Dang.
yeah,
Definitely.
and I literally went into the idea of going to tech. My dad had told me in a loose conversation, "Hey, go to Virginia Tech, get your degree, business degree in economics, and we can talk about you running this company."
Mm.
I'm like, at this time, this is even before I had gone to tech. I was in high school. I'm like 16, 17 years old, and I'm saying, hold up, I get to run my dad's company. I got to go to Virginia Tech. I do get a business degree, and I get to like follow in his path, and I'll get an S class. And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm on my own with my 95 Jetta, and I'm like, huh, all right then. Um, so I ended up going to England, taking care of my dad in England for about 6 months, getting him back on his feet. I came back to the U.S. Um, I went out to New Mexico, helped out with my dad's, my parents like Pine Nut Farm. They had a property out there. They were looking to build a cabin out there. So I went out there to help. Ended up coming back. I had saved up enough money to do 1 semester at Virginia Tech, and that is the time I decided to join the Air Force Reserves. Um,
Mm.
Still don't know to this day. Obviously, I wouldn't change anything in my life. Part of me really kind of wishes I went active duty. The other part was like, well, I wanted to finish up school. Plus, I wasn't sure how comfortable I was PCSing throughout your career.
Mhm. It's rough,
So
man. Yeah.
it really
Rough
is,
Absolutely.
time.
and
Yeah.
it
Yeah, it
like
is.
I couldn't do with it, and I figured like, hey, if I join the reserves, it gives me options. Like when
Hmm.
you're active duty, there is no going back till you can palace chase after like 2 years. At least with the
Yeah.
reserves, it was like I'll put my feet, get my feet wet, see how it goes. The GI Bill and the kicker helped me pay for school. Um, and so that's how I got my bachelor's through using the GI Bill on my reserve side.
Absolutely. What I was going to ask you is, at that point when your parents, right, essentially cut you off, um, to the point when you decided to come back to the US and enroll at tech, I'll call it tech now, like you guys say. So obviously, yeah, tech
VTech.
what exactly? What was your mindset like? What was the thought process for you? And how did you get to that point where you made that decision for yourself, right? That, hey, I'm actually going to go back to school. I'm actually also going to enroll in the military and just follow through with it.
So, why my parents had cut me off financially, what they did provide me the necessities, as in if I needed a place to live and food, that sort of stuff. I didn't get that. I didn't get an allowance. Nothing was provided for me. So it was definitely certainly not like you guys' story of coming home and seeing your stuff saying, "Hey, the door's
Yeah.
closed." Um,
Yeah,
So-
it's a different feeling for sure. You come back home at night, and there's like this light on in the office, which is never on. That
yeah.
was a moment for me. I knew it before it even happened.
Ah.
Yeah, but carry
So-
on.
So it's definitely not like that. But I knew that I needed to go to school.
Mhm.
As in it was something that initially school around this area is just something you do, and I think that's what a lot of kids nowadays miss on the fact that, oh well, I go to high school and then I go to college because that's what everyone does, and then I get my degree and I get a job in front of a computer and I make lots of money.
Right.
Well, now the world doesn't work that way. I knew I needed to get my degree, which oddly enough, I didn't really finish my degree till 2012 because I needed to complete pre-calculus. Even though I had passed calculus back in 2004, I had to take pre-calculus to graduate in 2012. So that just
That's another story.
baffles my mind, but it's okay. But yes, I know I needed to go to school. And that was just my goal, was to get to school. So between working jobs and saving my money in the reserves, it provided me this at least structure. And I actually ended up finishing my time at Tech was done in 7 semesters rather than the 8th semester, because I only needed that one math class left. I just overloaded because at this point the difference is I'm paying for school.
Yeah.
Granted,
True.
the military was, but when it's your own money,
Yeah, it hits different.
it hits different.
It does. Exactly.
So yeah, I got done with Virginia Tech 2007. I was 1 credit short. I started my career. Oddly enough, I deployed, and I think when I got back from deployment, my buddy goes and asked me, "Hey man, when was the last time you took a course at Virginia Tech?" I'm like, 2007. He goes, "Dude, after 5 years, you lose your eligibility to the curriculum that you were following." And I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You have to follow like the new degree plan after 5 years, which likely means different classes or more classes."
Mhm.
And I went, "Oh crap." So I got myself involved in Nova and I finished out that pre-calc degree. And then I ended up getting my master's. I went to Liberty. Part of me was like, all right, I know that, again, you want to tick off boxes. You want to make yourself more appealing.
Yep.
People are always going to look for ways to ding you. Everything in life is a competition that you've got to one up the one person. And I had this excuse that I couldn't do my master's degree because, well, you know what? I don't have time. It costs too much money. And a buddy of mine, Senior Master Sergeant John Dixon, he came up to me. Both him and I were virtually, our careers have gone side by side the entire way. And he went, "Dude, I'm about to do my MBA out of Liberty. You should do it." I looked at him. I was like, "Dude, I don't have time for that. And, that costs money." He goes, "Well, with the reserve tuition assistance, the reserve tuition assistance pays up to $250 a credit. And Liberty's master's degree program for DoD members and family members is $275 a credit for grad school." And I see your faces over there, Kenny.
Yeah.
$25 out of pocket per credit.
Yeah, you better do it, man.
$75 a class. So I sat there and I was like, damn, that took that took off. I can't use money as an excuse. I can afford $75 a class.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. And you what? How many credit hours were you taking? 6, maybe 3?
Exactly.
One class a
Yeah, I was
semester?
taking 2 classes a semester. And so then I'm like sitting there going, well, I don't have time for this. And then that same evening, I'm sitting on the couch as I'm on like my third episode of NCIS, going, you know what? Maybe I do have this. I do have this time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that's what it came down to, was like, and the same reason is, as Peter knows, in the military, like, you gotta lead by example.
Yep. It's the only way to
Uh,
do it. Otherwise, people don't respect you. Your subordinates won't care about what you say, you know? So
And
it's true.
so leadership is a huge part of me. As a leader, like, you're always being watched.
Mhm.
Everyone is watching you at all times, and you've got to set the example. And so for me to sit there and say, hey, you got to focus on your professional military education. You got to focus on volunteerism. You've got to focus on doing all of these aspects of your career. But if you don't do them yourself, you're not going to be followed. One of my favorite quotes is the difference. Leadership is not a position. A boss is a position. And a lot of people sit there and they go, hey, you know what? When I get that position, I'm going to act like this. Well, why don't you act like this now?
Mhm.
Now, yeah.
Very true.
And instead of saying somebody, hey, go do this, say, let's go, do this together as a team. And so that was kind of a lot of my things is, hey, I'm going to ask my troops that they need to focus on their education. I better go do that too. I don't want to say, well, sir, you don't do it. I love
Mhm.
spending time on gate duty in the pouring rain with my troops. To me, that speaks. I would rather, as a senior NCO in the pouring rain, speaking to my airman, because guess what? One, it shows him that it doesn't matter how far up the chain or the ladder I've gone, I will be out here with you.
Mhm.
At the same time as me, it is the best time for me to get to know them,
Yep.
because when I'm in my office, when we're in a meeting, all this stuff, there are all of these other people asking who want this, who need this, and the environment is not catered to my troop having a real-to-real conversation with me.
Mhm.
Very
So,
true.
but yeah, I ended up finishing
Yeah.
on my
Yeah,
master's.
there you
Yeah. I think that is.
come a long way, man.
I just wanna.
Got a lot of questions to ask
I
you.
know. I have to. Now here's the thing. Before we move
This
forward,
one is quite interesting,
I know.
though.
Dude. I'm so totally captivated right now, and because there's so many things that you're saying that I want to ask before we move forward, right? Just so that at least we can cover this now. One of those things is just um, very recent time management, right? So you went from. I mean, you could roll it all the way back, right? From the beginning, but at the same time, when we're much younger, right? Time and the magnitude of certain things that are presented to us do not exactly click. But eventually you get to this point where you can get stuff done. And I feel like that is when it switches to I don't have enough time for this and blah blah blah. So you essentially something you said profound there for me was this moment where you were sitting there watching NCIS, right? You probably go to work and you go to school and come back and watch some NCIS. But then you went from that in the same 24 hours in a day to
Mhm.
work, school, more school, right? And then it just continuously builds from there to where you are now, where you have work and you have two businesses that you're running and a family as well, right? So um, that is just something that I wanted to point out and something that I thought was really critical. And maybe you could even shed some more light on it for us. How was that for you when you transition to this point where you're now taking on all of these things and approaching your goal?
So it all stems, and I think it comes from the foundation
Yeah.
of, and I used to hate it. Like, and every Father's Day, I write the same thing in my Father's Day card to my dad here. I hated as a kid. Um, Growing up in McLean, the kids, they slept in the morning, my best friends, they'll play Xbox, drink Mountain Dew, they'll play basketball, they'll go on vacations. Well, we went to our country house in Pennsylvania. It's a gorgeous house. It was built during the Civil War. But at 6 o'clock in the morning, my dad will wake me up and be like, "Hey, John, it's time to get up. We got projects." What do you mean we got projects? Like, we got to fix the swimming pool. We got to fix the outdoor shower. We got to paint this. We got to scrape this. We're going to rebuild this. We're going to fix this. We're going to cut the grass. To the point, I push mowed like 2 acres once.
Dang.
Wow.
So my summer job in the house was during high school was cutting the grass, and we have about 2 acres up there, and we have a riding lawnmower. And one day, my dad is obviously in work at DC, and he calls me up, just, "Hey, John, how's things going? What's your plan for the yard and stuff?" I thought I had a day off, my dumbass over here. "Hey, Dad, the lawnmower is not working. So yeah, the grass is gonna have to wait." And he goes, "Well, why does it have to wait?" I'm like, "What do you mean? The riding lawnmower is not gonna work." "Well, does the push mower work?" "Well, yeah." "Okay, well, you better get started."
Uh-oh.
You're kidding me, right? He goes, "No, you better get started because before you know it, the sun's going to be setting." And the sun had literally just come up. And oh,
Dang.
okay. So just that mentality my dad had, why pay somebody to do something you can do?
Mhm.
Mediocrity is never rewarded. And he's like, I love phrases, I love movies, like I'm that type of underdog person. I love Rocky, I love Invincible, you name it, like Coach Carter, like all of those underdog type movies I like. But what do they all have in common? Somebody that has put them down and saying they can't do something. You're too small, you're too weak, and you've got to go through the same way we talked earlier about grinding, about calling sometimes that, you know what, I just know I got to call 1 inch. I think Al Pacino said in Any Given Sunday, the difference, no, he says, you want to call for that inch. I can't remember exactly what he says, but
winning and losing.
Yes, is 1 inch. I'm the guy who's willing to give it all and die is the one that's going to win. Like, so taking all of this and building up to it was like, okay, realizing that every mountain that you get to is not the top. It's a smaller mountain. There's someone better out there who's willing to do more. So a big switch for how I changed, or my mind changed, was it went from what can it do, it being anything, a certificate, a job, anything could do for me, to what can I do for it? That's the biggest switch in my Air Force career. I was always trying to make what the Air Force could do for me to what I could give back. And so you asked me about doing grad school and working full time. I actually ended up joining my HOA, which is a ridiculous thing to do because usually only old white folks do HOAs on the board. Old white retired folks.
Hey, they run that, man.
Show up, you can
They
make
run
no
that, man.
decision.
Did you get a golf cart?
So I live in Burke. Burke is one huge HOA. It's 5,800 homes on 1,700 acres, I think, or something like that. It's huge. And I got a violation and I decided I would run for the board because I was like, you know what? I want to know what goes on in these places. And I'm not the type of person that you get them so many times that I want to complain, but I don't want to do anything about it.
Yep. That's very common nowadays.
Yes. It's a lot easier for somebody to type something up and voice their opinion, but they don't want to make the change. So I made the change, and my wife asked me, she said, because I asked her, I got to get, don't know if you guys are married, but you got to get permission. Yes. So I asked my wife, hey, babe, do you think, like, are you okay if I like run for the board? She goes, John, you're working full time, you've gotten promoted, you're doing grad school. Are you sure you can take this on also? And I was like, yeah, I can. She goes, but you've got to answer me one question, honestly. Like, all right, what's that? She goes, does this have anything to do with the violation that we got written up for? And I was like, yes, it does.
She knows you too well.
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them.
But I
Hey,
wanted to know
know.
why. And
The guy knows what's going on,
so I
man.
did that. I actually just recently stepped down. My term ended. I did that for 4 years, became the VP, and decided that I needed to put wanted to put more time into other ventures. One being my rental car business. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's all about trying to get to a next mountain and never being complacent, because one of the things I always picture life as is this: we're in a rowboat going upstream, and you can give the minimal effort and just stay in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide to take a break, you're gonna fall down the river. And if you want to get up, you're gonna have to give more.
I've been listening to your story and I've just been quite amazed. And you know, they call me the farmer in the group.
Yes,
You
Kenny
know,
is a farmer
Kenny is the
because
farmer in the
everything he
group.
says had to
You
do
know,
with seeds. So
Yeah, he plants everything.
planting
it's all
seeds.
about
Yeah.
it's all about planting seeds, man. And I'm sitting here thinking that it's either your parents at a very young age, or the private school that you went to, or the school that you went to, or your parent. No, you have multiple parents, so you didn't get that seed planted in you by your bad parents, but then you had the struggles that you experienced with your uncle and your aunt, which is also your parents, and then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I'm going to call your McLean parents your rich parents, and also your parents actually, but your rich parents. And the the seeds that they planted in you, I'm not sure if you remember every single one. You've told us some of them. Do they all contribute to the John that we see today?
Yes.
And if you have not, if you had not experienced those seeds, do you think you will still have ended up to become who you are today?
No, not at all. So like as I said right off the bat, like my biological mom and dad, um, they did the most unselfish thing, just the pure essence of love that you could ever see in a parent, which is giving up, allowing their child to grow up away from them, for the love of somebody else. Um, and that's one of the denominators throughout my entire life was I was loved.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very lucky. I am very lucky to be loved. Um, and when I got adopted,
L-
uh,
Love should
go
be your
ahead.
middle name, by the way. Love should be your middle name, by the way. John Love.
um, when I got adopted, the U.S. courts in Fairfax actually asked me to go see a shrink, and they before they would sign off on my second adoption, they was like, he needs to go see a shrink. Like there is no way that he went through these stages of his life
All that
without not mentally having
acting as normal.
issues. And
Yep.
couple of sessions, actually oddly enough, the doctor out there was called, my shrink was called Dr. Payne. So that's a running joke with my family.
That's a good name for
John
a doctor.
Payne.
Um, but yeah, like they've even through like the difficult times, like my mom in England and my dad in England, they worked hard to protect me. They didn't have the greatest marriage together. They argued, obviously, like a lot of couples do, about money. There was different dynamics going in there. Um, but my mom in England would literally do anything. She was a very proud, and she was a smart. She was a nurse at one point, but she worked at McDonald's. She cleaned toilets. She did what she needed to do to protect me and do what you need to do. And so I saw that like hard work. Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead, Kenny. You look like you got something.
It's funny. Yes, I might be wrong, but correct me. You have this really good habit of saving money. And I have a feeling, I'm connecting the dots, that you probably got it from your mom in England.
So she is very good at saving money. Um, and I would say I'm not the greatest because I have wasted lots of money on freaking cars.
Ours, yep.
Yeah.
Same here.
So
You see,
Yeah.
you wasted money on cars, but you were able to survive after your rich parents cut you out.
Yeah.
You were able to
Mm-hmm.
pay for college,
Yeah.
even though you were still spending money on the car. Because some people are just bad at money, like they can't even keep a penny on them.
I a lot of it was just, you know what, time you can make money. I think was it J. Cole and Jay-Z had a song, Nice Watch, sums up that, yeah, you time is money, but you can always make money, you can never get back time. And I
So
that was
true.
that kind of leads right into the kind of the fire idea, which is my buddy, I had told PJ about Kiet.
Yep.
He is definitely like the guy to talk to about it. I somehow have some of the essence in what I do, but he is the guy who is 100% all in on the fire mentality. The fire mentality being financially independent, retire early, and cutting away excess things. Like, people don't really understand at a young age, when you buy something on a credit card, you're paying that interest. So you may pay for a dinner for $100, but if you don't pay it off that month, that dinner is now like $110 and then $120. And by the time you're done, that hour you enjoyed that meal has now cost you $180. But
Yeah,
for
and you
what?
already
And some
you
more
already
hours.
shit it out.
And some more hours to pay it off.
Yeah, you took a shit when you got home, and then your dinner's gone. You're still
So
paying for it.
So my first lesson on that is actually kind of funny. Was I did a bunch of properties, yard work. I was kind of a yard boy in high school out in Fort Washington. There was a bunch of properties along the waterfront, and I made $10 an hour, which was great money. It was more money than Blockbuster paid me, which was my first high school job. And yeah, actually, I saw that on YouTube. It brought back some memories then. But I worked out in the sun, sweating my rear off, just absolutely just drenched. And I drove home and I went to McLean and I was like, you know what make me feel better? A Starbucks Frappuccino. And I went in there, I paid the $5, I walked out, and I think I was done by the time I walked to my car. And I went,
What? $5 good.
Yep.
Busted my tail, man.
like, this was 30 minutes in the baking sun cooking. Like, I'm out there hard manual labor for this. That was $5, and that was like the last time. And like, still to this day, I still once in a while I buy them, but not like that. That was my moment of what the value of $1 was.
How do we, from your point of view, right? Because I know there are moments why you probably, maybe not you, because you're pretty tough. Have you ever had a moment of slacking off, maybe feeling like giving up? Because the objective of this channel is to motivate and show people this wonderful way of yours. Maybe we can help motivate someone else out there. What would you say to someone out there to push them just like you've gone so far?
So
I'm sure there's someone out there that was also adopted and maybe feel like giving up.
So the giving up is actually one that touches me closely, especially now with going through COVID. I'm going to speak to rest in peace Shannon Jackson, Tech Sergeant Shannon Jackson. He took his life the 3rd of April 2020. And like, suicide is a silent killer. You don't know what people are going through. I know even during COVID, and my wife suffers from depression and high anxiety, and everyone is different. And even me, I find myself, I know my triggers, and my wife has known that what her triggers are, and I can sit there and I was at a traffic light, and I'm like, I'm sad. Why am I sad? I don't know why I'm sad. I've got nothing to be sad about. But I was. And for me, it's little things. I think the worst day last year was Veterans Day. And not because it was Veterans Day, but I had a day off and it was raining. It was cold, it was raining, and I laid on the couch and I watched Netflix. And that's not the type of person I am. I am very much a do list type person. For me to feel better, and I kind of feel everyone's got these jars of their threshold of water, of what they can handle or how they feel, how much energy they have. And my resiliency, and it's a very big Air Force word of,
Mhm.
I was one of the proctors on resiliency, being able to bounce back from things. Well, my resiliency bottle had gone real down because I needed to build that. For me, completing a goal gives me a little boost of energy. Doing something gets me. And for me, when I'm struggling, is to do a to-do list. And it could be a very menial task. And I love to-do lists. I did one over the weekends. It was, okay, the dishwasher, laundry, go to the dog park, work out, do my taxes, cut the grass, edge, wash the cars. And I don't think Saturday I sat down once. I got up in the morning at 5:40, 6:30. I was at the dog park at 7 a.m. I was there till 9. I came home. My wife made me eat breakfast because she was like, "Hey, you need to eat breakfast, otherwise you're gonna collapse."
Dude, you said
Uh,
he made me eat breakfast. Oh my god.
yeah,
Like
she
it's
was
a
like,
punishment.
You should
"Yeah,
like sit down.
sit down. You're not leaving until you finish your vegetables." So
That's
I had my breakfast. I went out. I cut the grass. I edged. I cleaned the stuff up, and I wanted to wash the cars, but I was like, you know what? Business comes first. Both my cars came back from rentals. That takes priority over washing my own car. So I went out there, and then I got home. I washed my cars, and I was exhausted. It was, I think, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had not sat down since my wife told me I had to eat breakfast. And I needed to go for a run. Not because I needed to, just because it is a routine. It is something that I
Mhm.
want to hold myself accountable for. And I've done this ever since I was a young kid. And it might seem like it's weird, but I have an argument with myself. I remember being like 10, no, I got to be like 12 years old. And this is when inline skates, so street and vert ramp and X Games was
The
on
big thing
point.
back then.
Yeah. And I remember, like, I would tell myself when I'm on the top of the coping on a vert ramp, like, man, it's scary looking down there. And I would have these arguments with myself. Yeah, John, you're too much of a pussy. You're not going to go down there. You're gonna slide down. You're a little bitch. You're not doing this. And I would have these. And it's the same way as, no, John, like, yeah, okay, you want to be a little pansy. Don't go for a run. And I would psych myself, like, I'm going to go do this because, and that is sometimes your mental part is your body wants to play it safe. Your mind wants to protect you. That is its job, is to protect you. And you have to overcome that. It I didn't take the AFOQTs, the Air Force Officers Qualifying Test, because I was scared. I was scared of the results. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go study and then I'll take it. Well, I never got around to studying it. And eventually I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this fear of failure take over. And I took the test and I actually did well on it. You may find this is going to be an interesting one, especially since we've now been talking for an hour. Peter, I did not get picked up by the commissioning board because they thought I was unapproachable.
Dang,
What does that
that's
mean?
wild.
Unapproachable.
They thought that troops would not come to me to talk.
You don't have
That
the
is so
personality.
wild how they can like look at a
Why is
piece of
that?
paper, right? Like no,
Yeah.
because the way the military works. Because I was gonna commission too, but ultimately I decided to just get out completely. But
We'll talk about
what
that
it is,
later.
yeah. So what you do is you take this test and then you submit like your work package, like all your accomplishments to the board, and then from there they're like, okay, we're taking him, or okay, we're not gonna take him. And I think you go through like a little interview process, right?
So yes, out of the interview process, they came out, and I'll give them credit. Like I don't want to dismay, but the interview was so structured that it was full service dress, which is like our best uniform. There was facing movements, reporting statements, even instructions on how to sit down, and
Yeah, it's
and
wild.
where our hands need to be placed. And the enlisted officers, like the officers are like the leaders and the enlisted folks are the workers. And yes, you have supervisor workers, but we are the worker bees. So this is supposed to be in the leadership position. So I answered all of my questions in a very direct, concise, confident manner. And I get done and the command chief says, hey, I got some feedback the next day. Hey, yeah, the board came back and says that you were unapproachable, and that's why you didn't get picked up. And
Interesting.
it hurt.
I guess you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
you,
it sucks, man.
You don't win all the time, but and you're not winning all the time. It's not by your own choosing. It's by
And-
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I want
it's
to
also
bring
how
up
you
to that
react to
point
it.
yeah,
is
yeah.
in the
it's how you react.
military, there's such a structure, right? That you can work so hard and your accomplishments feel like they were not accomplishments. So it's so easy to get psyched out in the military, like, damn, I am kind of worthless, or damn, I fucking should have done more. Even in reality, you were pushing 110%,
Yeah.
right? And that's why, to me, it's amazing that John, all the stuff that you've been through, you're a freaking senior. So that's a really hard. There's only what, like maybe 5-6% of the Air Force
2%.
2%.
Oh, crap.
It's 1% for chief, 2% for senior, and I think 5% for master, or maybe
Yeah,
10%
so
for
he's
master.
so he's like 2% of the 1%. So that's crazy. So props to you for that, man.
Thank you, sir. But yeah, it's really it's life lessons. It's not, and I picture it like the Rocky movies, the ones where they're fighting, they're gritting. You just got to move forward. You've got to understand and ask for help. That's a lot of the people there, especially in this nowadays. The world is so social media focused that everybody looks about what everyone else has done. Well, on Facebook and on Instagram, it's a highlight reel. It shows everybody's best picture. Things are filtered. You don't know. Yes, you may know somebody that's gone on vacation and that shows their picture on laying on a boat, but they could be broke as shit and lonely, racking it up on credit card.
Yeah, imagine
So-
if like all the pictures you're swiping and the last picture is like their credit card bill and it says past balance. Like that's not part of the Instagram reel.
Yeah. And so that a lot of people get that wrapped up in their mind. And it's very funny now that if you look around, and I'll rotate this back to cars, but I wish I knew this. I was always in a rush. For me, one of the big things is a changing was when I used to have my GTI. God, I love that car. That was amazing.
Dude, isn't it the greatest car ever?
It is.
Oh,
I don't think, dude, listen, man. I've had a
Let's
lot
not
of.
make this a car
cars.
conversation.
No, this is going to be very quick, but we just all have to acknowledge that is the most amazing car ever.
It is yes. I absolutely regret ever selling it, but I was an idiot and I got a promotion and I was moving too fast.
Right.
I pictured what I saw my dad has done with his nice cars, and I wanted to get there without doing the hard work or being prepared, which oddly enough is funny because now I don't have a car payment and all my cars are old. Like I thought having a new car and being in a rush, and my GTI, I was always trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. Only to realize later that, especially in DC traffic, if you just take your time, because I actually ended up getting very cars that were terrible in gas mileage. So my VW CC was terrible in gas. And then I got a Wrangler, and that was even worse on gas. That I stopped becoming in a rush and then I figured out that I was only like, it only took me 1 minute later.
So time.
Yeah, it's like when you're like rushing to the light, people are cutting everyone off.
Yeah.
And then you see him at the same red light.
And you're like, hey, I see you. But that changing from being in that rush mentality and trying to develop and grow and build, will I get to point that I might have a nice S-Class? Maybe. I'm sure as hell I'm not going to buy a brand new one. But right now, I've got my 18-year-old Mercedes SL that I paid $4,000 for. People think that is a brand new Mercedes, and I'm like, yeah, it was $4,000. It costs less than your Civic. I've got my Lexus LX 470, which is a dog vehicle, and I'm happily drive the 95 Camry, which I laugh because this guy that you're talking to was one that used to shop at Express. Like half my wardrobe was Express for men. I drove this gorgeous, and Peter saw it, or PJ saw it. My VWCC, it was a
Yeah, that thing was
2010.
nice, dude.
MSRP was 50 grand, two-tone leather. It was gorgeous.
Yeah,
And I was like,
3.6 VR6.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm driving a 95 Camry willingly, because confidence, like you growing up, you think you need to have, like, you know what, people are going to respect me more because I have a nice car. People are going to respect me more. And yes, there is obviously, like, if you go to work, how you dress, it's important. But spending $300 on a belt, and half the clothes I wear, my wife and my mother-in-law buys me, or I got for free. Like, that doesn't change. The whole perception of things changes when you know what's actually valuable in life.
Yep.
And the
Problem,
car doesn't change.
problem
What's
is,
up, Kenny?
why do we have to get old for us to learn this mess, man? Like, why didn't I know this?
This is true.
In my
No,
20s,
it's because our parents
my
tell us all the
10s.
time, and we just don't listen.
I think what do you get? I also think that when you're younger, you also have that shiny object syndrome, right? Because for me personally, looking at it right now, when I got the it's interesting because right after I got out of high school, not too long after getting out of high school, my parents were always kind of like not on the same page with each other, and I feel like, I don't want to say I took advantage of the situation, but the situation allowed me to execute on what I did, which was essentially tell my father, yeah, I would like to have a car. And so he took me to a dealership and got me a brand new car. And then shortly after that, the first one was an SI, right? Before I had the GTI, I had a Mark 5 SI. Amazing car, great car. Um, did a lot of unsafe things. Sometimes I don't know how I'm alive. But
Oh, I've got those stories too.
yeah, exactly. But and then I went ahead and I got a GTI as well. But now at this point in time where I am, I'm sitting back and I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, well, every single car that I've ever wanted already exists right now, right? I can easily get to a point where I can afford almost any of this. Dude, you can get a Lambo below 100K right now,
You
right?
can get a GTR right now,
You can get,
50K,
dude, you can get a
100K.
lot, right?
Not a
But
lie.
it's at the same right, and at the same time, I'm at this point where you could say it's growth mindset growth, right? And I'm like, even if I had the money for it, I don't think I want a Lambo. I don't think I want a bunch of these things, right? Where at first, if I had that mindset from before, I would like, dude, I need to get after it, and I need to figure out a way to get this thing, whether or not it's reasonable, right?
So I think that one of the big differences is now is once we get older, we start to look at second, third, fourth order effects.
Hmm.
Like that Lambo, yes, it's going to get girls. It is fast. It's awesome. But then we start thinking, okay, well, how am I going to store it? Is it practical? Now that car payment, now I'm going to have this
Insurance.
attention. All of these things happen that we now start thinking about. I want to buy a new Land Cruiser or Lexus LX 570. Brand new, they're like $100,000.
Yep.
I've got a 17-year-old one right now in '04, and I can't justify it because why? Oh, and it's funny now. The more money that I make, the older and the crappier the cars I have. Because
That's true.
the best thing about this '04 Lexus is I was in the shopping center and I got home and there was a scuff mark. Somebody had pushed a grocery cart into it, but guess what? I looked at it, gave a little rub down, took out a clay bar, and I got most of it off. And I went, you know what? It's the dog car.
Absolutely.
I think it's the multiplying effect that kicks in when you start getting older. Because as a business owner now, you know that extra $600, $800 a month can do a lot more business wise
Yeah.
than liability and wastage. Oh, we didn't think about it back then.
So the funny
Absolutely.
thing is now you talk about that as a business owner. One of the best things about me starting this rental car business, because I'm always on Craigslist looking to buy a car. I always want to buy cars, and now I might have to buy another car if the '86, the Toyota 86 comes with a turbo and a T-top. I will buy a brand new one of those.
Yeah, that is
But
a nice car.
I know my wife will make me sell one of my cars because I have. But anyway, when I'm always looking at cars when we're watching TV. But now I sit there and I look at them and I'm like, man, if I buy this car, I could buy another. I should just buy another rental car because guess what? The money that I'm paying, I make money. This actually has a function and a purpose to it.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I was gonna add something to this. So you know this mindset that you have that we're also learning now. You know, it's this group momentum. I think that kicks in. Like if you let's say you've continued to surround yourself with your car buddies and friends that has not grown
Mhm.
financially, mentally, then your mindset will probably stick, still be that same way. Which is why we have this group here. Is that
Mhm.
you can change, you can become a better version of yourself because
Yeah.
this group mentality, this positive good mentality is what we're trying to promote. Is that you can still have fun. I mean, you're still having a blast. You still have this wonderful S class that still does the same level of performance if spend a couple extra $1,000, not as much, and
Yep.
enjoy the benefit of of a luxury car than
Mm.
something super new that you can still maybe enjoy with delayed gratification 10 years down the road.
So
Absolutely.
one of my best, and this just relates to everything. Doesn't just relate to the businesses, but it was something that I told and I learned. Um, if you want to get to know somebody, look at the people, look at the company they keep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And
And
so that is
yeah.
the big one. It's not gonna lie, it's kind of one of the reasons I took up golf and why I golf. Um, because I was very big into soccer. I was big into football. I grew up playing soccer and cricket in England. Um, and I was playing flag football out here. I ran men and co-ed flag football teams and co-ed soccer teams. And I dawned on me like, man, you know what? Like, this is not gonna help me like networking.
Mm.
Um, the folks that I'm meeting, and yes, that I am not going to lie, there are some very successful and educated folks that I've played football with.
Yeah.
But football's not a sport where you sit next to or talk to somebody.
Rolling, just
Mhm.
taking a
Yeah.
walk, having a conversation.
But now in
Yeah.
golf, you're networking. The folks that are play golf are usually very successful or are successful or up in their careers, mature folks with business ideas. And during shots, and shots, not drinking shots, but golf shots,
Hmm.
um, you're in the golf cart, you're bouncing off ideas, you have conversations, you find out opportunities. Um, and so I started to actually, it was right after deployment, I started to teach myself golf. And it's only been recently, the last 3 or 4 years, I started to play a little more seriously. And it's a game changer. And um, as you were previously saying about surrounding yourself with people, these are kind of
Mhm.
you know what, you could, everything is an, every hardship, every negative experience, every positive experience is an opportunity to learn. Uh, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, once said, and I got to write it down because I always get it wrong: a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Mhm.
And so all of our hardships have taught us something. We've learned how to navigate, and everything. We have this muscle memory that, hey, you know what? I've gone through something this tough. My first rental property, we had to evict somebody.
Hmm.
Um, uh, we got taken, and they say if you own a rental property, you're gonna get that one bad apple. It's guaranteed. If it
Mhm.
happens in the beginning or in the end, you're gonna get that bad person. It happened to be our first renter. It cost me 20 grand.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, between lawyers' fees, destruction, cleaning costs, lost revenue, it was probably less. It was about $18,000.
Mm.
Um,
It's a
but
lot.
I was right off this bat like, damn, this American dream is going to be over real quick. Like this is horrible. Like I don't know what to do. And we bounced back, and I actually ended up getting a guy who ended up being one of my best friends renting. And but again, everything is a life lesson. You learn the same ways with running or lifting. Like running 2 miles may sound like a huge monumental goal. And then you get there and you're like, hey, that wasn't too bad.
Hmm.
And so you then remember that times are tough. Like my wife and I, if we've looked at it, it says, hey, we've had arguments, we've had fights, especially early in our relationship. And now we look back at it and some of the arguments, I'm like, babe, I we've done this. Like this doesn't on our fights. This doesn't even hit the Richter scale. And the same with you. Like we hit these problems and we're like, I've got through worse.
Yo.
Like
Yeah, exactly, man. Like sleeping in a car, dude. Like if I'm not sleeping in a car, I'm living a pretty good life.
yeah,
Just because nothing will be worse than the way it was. So
Yeah,
that's
and
that's
that's
the
that's
mindset that I have.
and that's what I'm saying because I think ultimately when you go through all these difficulties that we all go through, obviously some people take it a little bit harder than others, um, but for me personally, I think when I was at my lowest point, right? Like I was telling Kenny and John before the podcast, the only way is up.
yeah.
So might as well get up and get to it,
And
right?
like it
Because
like listening to the Rock story, his whole
yeah,
idea about $7.
Mm-hmm.
Um
yeah,
it's it's phenomenal.
incredible.
And
But
that
it's only those who persist, right? And I think because for me, I think one of the biggest takeaways, just from listening to you and just your experience, I think one thing that is definitely something that is definitely sticking out is just the consistency, right? The mental toughness and the ability to change your mind, right? You have to
Adapt.
always be willing to change and adapt. Exactly. It's like, adapt or die kind of thing.
Yeah.
You must change, you must evolve, you must keep
Overcoming
pushing
fears.
yourself. Exactly. Right. And also I'm also just, I'm just gonna give you my thoughts here so far because I know we have to wrap up soon. But just to also add on to the what you were saying there about going golfing, because it's a great opportunity to network with people, which it's something that I've also thought about myself. And I'll probably get out there soon as I have the mobility to swing a golf club and things like that without breaking the golf club. But I think, I think,
Hey, deadlift too much. He's gonna fucking
hey man,
crack
sometimes the resistance coming back at the golf club is too much and it just falls. Anyway, um, I know, I know that we kind of made it sound like the cars and things like that are can be irresponsible, right? But when it is the right time, I would also like to add that uh, having certain types of cars, right? Especially if you're an auto enthusiast, it makes it easier, and this probably make more sense for us here because we're auto enthusiasts. But when you get a certain car, it puts you inside a certain group of people, right? That
Mhm.
are, yes, you might be in that group with a half. You're going to be in the group with people who are not doing it the right way, and you probably just have a bunch of debt. But at the same time, when you go to these car meets and car shows and things like that, you meet other people who are on that path, right?
hmm
And just like that, you could have been sitting at home not doing anything and whatever the case might be, or just that split second where you got in your car and drove somewhere and sat around with a bunch of guys and some women, because car community is mostly guys. It's a boy. Someone said something once, and they said the car community is a bunch of guys just standing around the parking lot, pampering. Yeah, but nonetheless, though, you get in there and you meet some people that are could be life changing for you. I met PJ in the
Mhm.
car community, right?
Yeah, I met
We
John through Volkswagen too, man.
through Volkswagens, right? And it's like
Mhm.
instantly, the moment I got onto this call, it's like we instantly connected because it was like, how do you know PJ? I was like, oh, it's back when I had a Volkswagen, and it was instant, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is also something that is great about it, but you want to do it responsibly,
Yeah, I have a
for
hobby
sure.
Yep.
because I think having a hobby helps the success journey a lot much more fun than
Yeah, it gives you a goal to
Yeah,
attain.
yeah.
Like
absolutely.
once I make this amount, I can finally buy the dream car that I want, which is kind of like what I ended up doing. I ended up buying a Mark IV R32, and that's like, oh my god, that's been my dream car since 2010.
Yeah.
11 years later, I've worked my butt off
Yeah.
to finally be able to say I have one.
You
So my
you don't have
buddy,
to
I
qualify
think
too.
PJ started following with the Supra.
Mhm.
He had just bought a brand new Tacoma, saw this great deal on this Supra. He bought the Supra, and then he decided, like, man, like I love my Supra. That's going to be my car. And then he was like looking, he goes, you know what? It's just not really feasible. And he ended up selling his Tacoma and bought a Honda Civic, and that's his daily.
Yeah.
And yet he has a stick, uh, one JZ,
Oh,
uh,
it's a 2JZ, yeah.
two JZ,
Pretty awesome build, yeah.
Solid choice.
Supra. and
Yeah.
and it's just that kind of, and I've met these guys because I used to work at Enterprise, and the stories I have from working at Enterprise are just especially at the Mercedes dealership. um I gotta have a Mercedes. I dropped off a Mercedes. Okay, well, unfortunately we don't have Mercedes. We can't get, you just dropped off a 95 E-Class. We don't have a Mercedes. Well, I was told you had a Mercedes for me. I have to have a Mercedes.
You're getting an
I'll get you in.
Altima.
Well, and then you'll be like, hey, can we get your credit card? We got to take a deposit. Well, I was told it was free. Yes, it's just for incidentals. And it will be like declined, declined, declined. But then somebody drops off their brand new S Class or CL. And I'm like, hey, sir, you kind of came at a peak time. I'm really sorry, but the only thing I haven't available is this Pikachu yellow Chevy Aveo.
Yeah.
And the guy's like,
I remember those. I worked at
Yeah.
Enterprise and I remember those.
you
Those
did?
things were, dude, I actually crashed one.
Oh
But
no.
Oh, nice.
yeah, I
um,
was doing I don't know if it no, statute of limitation is passed. I was on the opposite side of the road. But carry on.
So,
Yeah, when
and
I was
I would feel bad. Like, I'm giving this guy who just dropped a 6-digit car a Chevy Aveo with manual
right.
windows. And he just goes, well, and I was like, sir, I've got this. I'm like really sorry. And he was like, well, it's got 4 wheels and engine, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, it'll get me to my office. I'm like, well, it looks like your car's going to be in the shop for the next couple of days. He goes, it will get me home and then I'll drive my Porsche. But then there were the folks that would drop off their Mercedes and it was a status symbol. And they had to have a Mercedes, even though it was like 15 years old with mismatching hubcaps. They had to have a Mercedes, and their credit card couldn't even accept $100 security deposit.
Hmm.
So it's kind of that mentality. You sit there and it's like, that doesn't make me. I'm not. Yes, cars are great. It's beautiful to have, but doesn't it seem ridiculous sometimes when you see somebody with a 2-door sports car and they're lugging around like 2x4s or trying to move a couch or something stupid, and you're like, dude, like
You have to be
it's not gonna
responsible.
work.
Yeah. It's about what is important in life. It's beneficial for anyone who listens to this. And it's beneficial for anyone. Hey, for some people they might not know. But
Mhm.
if listening to this makes a change for anyone, right? And even listening to this gives me some inspiration
Yeah.
and shows me that there are some things that I can improve on myself, right? And I think that that's what this is all about as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
thank you so much for inviting me. I've had an absolute blast talking to you. I want to hear about that Iraq story
hey,
later because
I'm gonna tell you about it right after this. It's
Off the record.
yeah, off the record for sure. Okay, but no, absolutely. Hey, John, it's been an absolute delight. I hope we can have you back on the show to just chit chat again.
Yeah.
Uh,
of course.
thank you, thank you, for giving us a shot, man. Just coming on here and talking with us. It's been
Yeah.
absolutely amazing, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you all.
Hey,
for sure.
Shay,
Yeah.
before we end the call, that's the standard question that we ask before
Oh
the end of each
yes,
before the end of
yes,
each call.
yes. Go
Uh-oh.
for it, Kenny.
Is it
It's
multiple
your show.
choice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go plug it up.
You can choose between A to Z, A through Z are
All
the
right. Well, I would take the Air Force answer of E or the above.
Hey, there you go. That's it. Well, Kenny, knock it away, man.
All right,
Go
all
for it.
right, all right. So, at Young and Successful, as Shay has mentioned earlier, our mission is to motivate, encourage other people, and show them the ways of success. Hopefully, bring folks like you on the show to show people that it can be done. And we believe that success is a journey. So we end most of our calls with this question, which is, what's your definition of success? And what's your why? What keeps you going?
For me, my definition of success is just being true to myself and being happy with no regrets. As I previously said, I thought my goal was to be rich. I used to make people laugh by, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Rich. I thought that would make me happy. And to me, it is my goal is to retire. And when I retire, I would like the opportunity to help build and help it um, do repairs on people's homes, like Habitat for Humanity. I enjoy it. I love working. I love making things better. And my dad's had the opportunity to do that. He's got a nonprofit called the Connected Planet, where they are focusing on right now developing apps for kids in Haiti to learn English. And he's got a part-time, he's got a gig as an SES advisor down at Sancom, and he's a very smart, successful guy. But at the tail end of his career, he just wants to make the world a better place. And I think if I could find a way, I would love to be able to teach folks. I've had the opportunity. My dad and my parents here taught me about how to change a tire, how to fix a toilet, giving me the tools and the confidence to go and do things that a lot of people now in generations are scared of doing. Or they didn't have the opportunity, knowing about a credit score, balancing a checkbook. And so if I could help somebody to go through that is my ultimate goal. And so if I can get to the point of being successful where I can share, like this podcast, some of my experiences and save a life or help somebody be successful. To me, it sounds cliche, but Virginia Tech's motto is "Ut posem," that I may serve. And that is my goal in life, is to serve this country, not only in the Air Force, but as you guys have done, making people successful, and successful as you just defined is not just money, but mentally successful, successful and fruitful in your life, with your family and with the ones that you care for and in your community. So.
True to myself, happy with no regrets.
Yep.
John Mill Hearne. That's what I'm talking about, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, Jay out.
Peter, PJ. See you later, alligators.
Double up.